There's my baby. What are you doing, sweetheart? You gonna sit with here with me?
Right, I can back into some other things now, not worry about her.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, call this meeting to order, so roll call if we could. Maybe so. Arnold Quinn.
Joy McCoy.
Philip Vanderneal. Andy Miller. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda tonight, just the minutes, February 22nd. Have a motion on it to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we've got a public hearing and possible action for the temporary plat. Approval of the final plan, development plan for Grand Park West Mountain Filing number 1. Areas 10W and 11W. So.
It's kind of up to the chair. We should kind of do it differently, but usually we present all the information, and then once the planning commission has answered questions with the presenter with baseline, then we open the public hearing.
And then the public hearing, right?
Okay, so I'll just introduce Will Charles, baseline. And we'll need to be able to share the screen.
Yep.
On Zoom and we'll do your presentation.
Is your microphone on?
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Will Charles will.
Hi. Just testing, make sure you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Let me pull up my screen share real quick.
Look at the screen here, what chance, right?
Oh, it's not on.
Was it not on?
Oh,
Hold on
can
a
you see
minute.
that?
1 second, well, we're getting the second screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael. Sorry, should I have said before?
You're on the wall. Yes.
I can just turn off the other ones. It's okay. Turn off, so you can just- 1 of 3 buttons here. There we go. Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Alrighty. Appreciate the time. As Julie mentioned, my name is Will Charles. I'm a planning consultant with Baseline. For the project before you tonight, it's for the Grand Park West Mountain Filing 1 planning areas 10W and 11W. So just a little background on the site. It's owned by Cornerstone Winter Park Holdings. The site with an extension to Grand Park Drive would be to the north of that and west of Old Victory Road. As far as the zoning on the property, it's currently zoned Grand Park planned development. That along with the majority of the area surrounding it is also zoned that as well, with portions to the south, as we'll get into, is bordered by Winter Park. As far as the existing, or as far as the proposed land use, the applicant is proposing 72 single family residential homes. And again, the request is for that planning areas 10W and 11W for a preliminary plat as well as a final planned development plan, or an FPDP. So as far as just process or the planning process of how we got here and where this is headed. So in 2005, the Plan Development District Plan was approved by the town board. So this, the FPDP, as well as the Plan Development District Plan make up a plan development. So that plan development is the first step, and this is the second in that process. And then additionally, there is the subdivision process, which is where the preliminary plat comes in. So this is the first step in that process. And then at a later date, if this moves forward, you would see a final plat come before you. So just to give a little geographic context, the blue outlined property is the subject property. You can see the rough outline of where the end of Fraser and beginning of Winter Park, or the city jurisdictions change on that red line. And then as well, US Highway 40 over there to the east, and then the majority of Fraser being to the north. As far as zoning map, as I mentioned earlier, this property, as well as most of the surrounding, is that Grand Park plan development, with the only portions not being that being the property owned by Winter Park to the south. Getting into the actual plan, this is the preliminary plat. So you can see the portion to the east being that 10W, where there are some smaller lot, single family residential style, whereas the portions to the west being that 11W, which are slightly larger lot sizes, but again, still that single family residential. As far as the Fraser Municipal Code goes, there are a couple of review criteria for these. The first one basically just goes into whether a preliminary plat is required. There are options to waive if there are, if it's simple in nature, or if they're not public improvements, or larger studies involved with the process. This project would not fall under that waiver criteria, so it does require this preliminary plat, which is why it's before you tonight. The second requirement being that it conforms to, or that the applicant submitted all of the requirements of Appendix 1, which is where the preliminary plat checklist is held in your code. For the sake of these preliminary plats, this appendix or checklist is attached to your staff report, but it also basically it requires them to submit documents such as drainage and grading reports, environmental studies, a traffic impact analysis, and things of that nature that are referred out to town staff as well as referral agencies for review. And with that, there's a couple of conditions that we'll recommend at the end of this presentation for some of these submittal pieces that the applicant provided. And then the second part of this preliminary plat is also a subdivision improvement agreement, just for those, those improvements that are being made on site for the project, and how those are handled. So that'll be required to be done as the process moves forward. The second part of the process, or the second part of the submittal for the evening, is the final plan development plan. So as I mentioned earlier, there originally was a planned development district plan that was approved by the town board in 2005. And I apologize for saying plan and district and all those words multiple times on these names, but so that was the first step in 2005, and this is the second portion for this planning area. So as you can see, it looks very similar to that preliminary plat. On this, it kind of goes into a little more of things such as parking, which each one of these, since they're single family residential, will be required to have 2 off-street parking spaces on each lot. It also goes into similar, requirements as far as what's required in that checklist for it, but with some, more detailed reviews that have also been referred out to outside referral agencies as well as town staff. Getting into these review criteria, kind of similar to before. So the first one, mentions that these the plan development process is no longer in the code for new developments. It's only for ones that have had those previously approved plan development district plans submitted. So as I mentioned, this one was submitted in 2005 and approved. So it's grandfathered in before that 2018 cutoff. Second portion, being that the FPDP conforms to that checklist, which again is in that Appendix 1, which is with your staff report. As far as referrals, so originally back in late 2022, the applicant submitted for a preliminary review, which was referred out, and then they formally submitted in January of 2023. Comments were sent back to them in early February, and then we are here where we are tonight. This is just the proof of publications and mailings to surrounding property owners, which were both done in early March. And then as I mentioned earlier, there are some criteria that we are recommending with approval for these processes. So the first two being first three being addressing those referral comments that are still outstanding after this round of review. The second is, or the fourth one being resubmitting those documents for review. The fifth one being that subdivision improvement agreement, which was mentioned as part of the preliminary plat. And then the sixth one just being following the process as far as lapse periods and timelines for how long you have to submit a final plat. And that is it for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions at this point from the board or?
No.
Yeah. Out from your presentation.
After the presentation? Sure. Okay. Mark?
All right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Clark Lipscomb for the record. Representing Grand Park, and Will, thanks for the introduction. So this is a portion of 10W11W. Obviously, you guys know we built the underpass. It was quite an endeavor, took a while, and that more or less facilitates us going and starting projects of this nature up the mountain. So it's our first one. I would like to point out it's a portion of 10W and 11W. 10W is zoned for 174 residential units, 350 lodge units, and 30,000 square feet of commercial. And 11W is 41 residential and 50 lodging units. So that's a pretty small portion of that. And there's future plans that we'll have that go further, and it would be 0.1, 0.2, 10W.1, 10W.2. You guys have seen this stuff historically. It is 72 lots, very straightforward. The lots are very similar to our Leland Creek subdivision project that we did in the town of Winter Park, which was the annex from Fraser back in 2004, and annexed into the town of Winter Park. and similar lot widths on the majority of the lots, and then we've got a little bit smaller lot product. That's a product that we're probably going to build on, be more of a site design specific for those. The rest of the lots are intended to be custom home sites. Sold individual buyers, custom home builders will build them, most likely. So we may build one or two, I don't know. But that's pretty straightforward. I think the layout's great. Old Victory Road is built, or it's like Grand Park Drive. We have to shift gears. I've been using Old Victory Road for 20 years, I think, as our major arterial. So Grand Park Drive is built up to where it cuts over to Winter Park. And then we've got infrastructure up the hill that this will tie into. So in the comments from the town, there's a lot of engineering comments, mainly look to me to be the majority drainage stuff, things that we'll address in our final submittals, final subdivision submittals, final engineering documents. This is preliminary. It is historical that we do, we've historically processed final plan, development plans, and preliminary plats concurrent. They tend to go together, they tend to work together. And that's how we've done this since 1999 when we first started platting projects under these PDs. You guys don't have PDs really anymore in your code. Some of the things that are referenced in your code required for applications have already been satisfied by the PD. And some of the conditions that have been requested, being updating environmental studies and traffic studies and things like that, we're not accepting of. That was the whole point of doing a PD. We spent years and crazy amounts of money to do master studies to be able to establish a plan that sets forth zoning that allows us to proceed quickly without being mired down in study after study after study for small projects of this nature. So nothing's changed up there other than the pine beetle's gone now. Cattle still roam and aspens and pine trees still grow, and you know all the studies we think are valid, good, and acceptable. Same with traffic. I don't know if Felsberg Holt submitted on this, but they will with final their typical update letter where they review the traffic studies that have been accepted by CDOT, the town of Fraser, and they update those and provide an agency report from them saying this is in compliance with the traffic study or it's not, and here's why, and here's what needs to be addressed. That's how we historically do these. And the point of having a master traffic study for this overall project. Okay. So I don't know what conditions Will was referencing about requiring, sound like they were requiring some things in your conditions. And I don't believe I have a copy of those conditions, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's everything that was submitted in the referral summary letter that was sent by Will to Layla and you in remind me, Will, in February?
Yeah, it was, I believe February 8th.
Yeah, and Layla responded to that, right, Will?
That's correct.
Yeah,
And that,
so I guess
and that
I
referral
had it on
response
my
is
desk.
attached.
I thought it was in this and it's not. So otherwise I would reference it. But our responses in that are very straightforward and clear with regards to these studies. And we're not going to do additional master studies for processing a normal subdivision plan. I hope the planning commission supports the idea and fact that we did a PD. It's what the town wanted at the time for both Rendezvous and Grand Park, and we spent a lot of money and a lot of time developing master studies, and we have no intention of starting to studying again. We're ready to go, and that was the whole idea. Let's get this stuff behind us, have good master planning that's based around all those studies. And so we need the current planning group and the planning commission to recognize that's why we did what we did. Those documents are all in file with the town of Fraser. They're all accepted by the town of Fraser and the other review agencies. I know we have a big group of new people, but we want that recognized that is in fact what we're relying upon. And those are what we're going to follow with respect to developing our property. And other than that, pretty straightforward. We're looking for a final plan, development plan approval tonight of a portion of 10W and 11W, as well as preliminary plat approval. And then our engineers will start working on addressing what I think largely were engineering comments, mostly drainage related from Merrick, et cetera. I think the plans are pretty close. They follow the sketch plan that was submitted and the direction we got from the town on the sketch plan. And a lot of those details that typically are in our final construction plans. Thank you.
So as a follow-up, I just want to point out that the comments for additional studies or updated studies are both from the attorney and from the engineer. And so at the planning staff doesn't negotiate that. I mean, I don't negotiate that. You guys can do what you want. But to me, that's something that needs further discussion with those professional consultants.
Well, how would you like to do that? But I don't think they're here tonight, and
They
the
are.
attorney's new, the engineer generally new. And nowhere in our documents or annexation agreement or all of the planning work that we've done historically does it require us to be updating these master studies, nor has anything changed. And you know, I'm happy to talk to Kent Whitmer, have a meeting, we set up a meeting with Kent Whitmer, we can set it up with the engineers, you,
Yep.
the managers, et cetera, and
I
we
think
can
that's
talk about what
appropriate.
we did, why we did it, and why it's there, and why we're not gonna go revisit this again, because we've changed people.
Sure. So the way the resolution is written is that those comments have to be addressed. Not that they're required to be accomplished. Right, so if they could be met to the satisfaction of those consultants, then that satisfies how the resolution is written. So there is time for discussions.
Okay.
Is there any questions from the board for the applicant?
I've got, you were talking about the traffic study, the Pulsberg, whatever.
Ellsworth Holt.
So what exactly would they supply?
So what they supply, Mayor, is, you have a master traffic study that's on hand, and filed with the town. That takes into account the overall full build out of this whole project and the traffic implications associated with it. And it guides various things that we built, whether they're collector roads, the types of roads, improvements at the highway, you name it. What they historically do is they go review that study and they review our plan submission. And they'll provide a letter that says this is in compliance with the traffic study we did. And it's under and the traffic trips will actually be lower, or it's over and the traffic trips could be higher. But that can be addressed by doing this, this, and this. That's historically what they do. Okay.
The one thing I read in that study, briefly, or the comments, I think, was they recommended this traffic light, which we have now at Grand.
They did, and there was a fight over that.
Yeah, so that was a big part of it, and we recommend that going to see that, so that's it. And thank you to our staff for filling in that trench.
Oh my gosh.
1,750 pounds.
Wow,
So you're talking about the
Doing it
giant
safe way.
pothole trench in the highway?
yeah,
On Grand Park Drive.
That was horrible,
right at the entrance, so, yeah.
right in front of, yeah, right on the highway. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to get pulled over by the police for my swerving, shot in the pothole. Pothole that's bad ever. It's crazy. Don't go to Taco Tuesday and then drive home. You might get arrested.
Yeah. So this would be something, well, this all comes back to staff, but on page 2, and you don't have this part, but the comments and that answers. There was a request for a utility report, but it was put back into the town's lab. So do you know what I'm talking about? If you go and look at the
Yep.
comments.
Yeah, I'm just
Let's
pulling
pull
up.
that up.
Yeah, but, so I can address that. I'm working with your, latest comment says we're working with the town manager. We're not. I haven't met with the town manager about this project. Or the prior town manager. We're working with your public works director to help kind of facilitate where are these files, what was done, et cetera, what are the plans. So there's multiple water studies. For instance, there's a Muir and Associates water study that was done as part of the PDD. Then there's a 2 in civil, which was High Country Engineering that was done and submitted. It's a more detailed study that is what a lot of our development down in the meadows is based off of, but it goes all the way up the hill. It basically took mirrors and took it to the next level.
Yeah.
So this is for water. And that same group did sanitary sewer. And that file has yet to be found here, but it was submitted and accepted by your staff. And so
You
we're,
have it somewhere?
we're working on getting a copy of it too.
Yeah.
It's pretty
You're looking to find it.
electronic for me, so we're trying to get a copy of it. I happen to have the water study, so that was good, and I emailed that to Paul. And amazingly, I have all the water CAD, which I have no idea how to open, that go with that file, but I think he wanted those, and so I'm gonna share those with him. And then we have a new detailed design study. It's really irrelevant for this. This project's in what's called the yellow zone. And you guys might recall, I built the yellow zone water tank on the east side of US Highway 40. And the way this system's designed, it's pressure zones, right? And it goes from the top of the mountain down through the valley. And there's kind of parallel tanks, one on each side of the valley, create some redundancy, they, pressure adjust and all kinds of stuff. And they're like the yellow zone tank that we have designed now is at the identical elevation of the yellow zone tank up the east side of 40. Okay, but the yellow zone tank capacity in the studies has ample capacity and flow and pressures for this neighborhood. As an example.
The
So
one across the way on the east side?
the east side tank
Okay.
feeds all of Grand Park today, the yellow zone tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, my office is fed by that tank. So the bowling alley, the rec center, et cetera. You guys might remember when I cut open the highway and brought that under the lines and did all that stuff. So we have now detailed construction drawings that have not been submitted to you that I just got for the entirety of our build out of the entire West Mountain water system to the top. Okay. That also has a whole nother water CAD model and another water study that is very, very similar to the 2N study, because it's very similar stuff, only it's specific to the actual design of the tanks, which 2N did not do, right? They use more of the mirror, big picture, here's where the elevations are planned. So we're just working with your staff to get some of the voids filled in of, here's these studies and
Okay.
here's what's being done. And
That's
so
what I
that's kind of
wanted to hear.
engineering
Just
related stuff. And
based on
then,
the comment, it sounded like it was just kind of getting dumped on our staff to
Yeah.
try to find all this stuff.
well, kind of, I mean, you guys have it all, but it's kind of can't be found, or they're having some challenges finding it, and we're trying to help where we can. To fill in the blanks when I have it readily available or can find it. And if not, we're contacting old engineers that might have them and getting copies from them and supplying them to the town. But yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, there was a letter from Russell Pennington. He talked about it 2 years ago. I think Clark was 2021, wasn't it? He talked about the yellow zone, and there was a mention in there that we needed more storage. You're showing studies that we don't need more storage to serve this.
so the yellow zone has a lot of capacity in it. I think off the top of my head, I think it's 1,100 units.
Right.
And so you gotta realize the water tanks are not built for our kind of gallon per day consumption that's in the EQRs that are in the water plant. They're built primarily for fire flows. So the water tanks are quite large and they're there for supplying fire hydrants, things like this. One of the reasons that we put a condition on all of our village stuff to be fire sprinkled was to lessen the amount of water storage that would have been necessary had we not done that. Oh, it was against, if, I mean, I don't know how you build tanks as big as you and me. So fire flows drive water tank design and water tank storage primarily. And then the residential use out of those is obviously one of the components and the primary intended purpose. You hope you never have to use them for fire, but the fire flows are one of the biggest design parameters. So the yellow zone tank, off the top of my head, don't hold me to this, like 1,100 units at that capacity in that system. And then above that, we've got the green zone tank in Rendezvous, which feeds down. Right, and so there's plenty of capacity in the system for this particular project. There's capacity for more. We go much higher up, we're out of the yellow zone and we get into the green zone, I think, and then we've got there's a blue zone that's below us. There's like 4 zones, there's 4 color zones, the way they did it.
Because Russell talked about pressure a little bit too, so there's plenty of pressure in the.
Oh, there's plenty of pressure at this elevation, there's plenty of pressure on
The
this.
blue zone's higher than the yellow.
Blue zone's below the yellow zone, blue zone's feeding this, the tank. Your blue zone tank's over here somewhere.
On County Road 8.
County Road 8,
Yeah.
yeah, that's your tank on County Road 8. Yeah, and then I connected the systems in 2009 down Old Victory Road. So,
But you intend to put tanks in on the west side.
West Mountain, yeah, you guys are about to get design, well,
That's-
y'all are, but your staff is about to get designs for water tanks to the top of the mountain. So all the way up to the Forest Service. There's pump stations involved. We have pump stations in Rendezvous in a couple of spots, I think. Yeah, it's a full kind of construction plan design. It's, let's go put it all in, but it doesn't relate to this. It's not needed for this. We're doing that for other reasons. Okay. So,
And this kind of relates to the, I mean. This is a dead end, obviously, and there were some review comments about that, and by nature it has to be, and you can't come in and build the whole West Mountain all at once. So there are two water lines they talked about, but that had to do with pressure, right, or different levels in the subdivision, or so. There was a lot of input from the engineers, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that we try not to build dead ends in our water system. And so this is a looped system that comes through, or
ultimately, it's looped, but
Yeah.
it is going to be a dead end
Sure.
initially. It can't,
Yeah.
there's no way to feasibly loop it.
sure, yeah.
At this time, and it'd be like the Meadows as an example.
Mhm.
I think the top of Rendezvous is a dead end. On the ridge, up there were dead ends in Winter Park Ranch. And one of the issues is not necessarily, it's water quality
Yeah.
and the flow water. So like in the Meadows, we agreed and everybody analyzed it. Adam Quigley was involved. That might be the one you're talking about, Russell Penny. I was like, guys, I'll put two parallel pipes in the same trench, loop them together at the end. We got a loop.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a loop. They're like, well, we don't really want to have to maintain that and take care of it, replace it one day, et cetera. And ultimately, it was agreed that the best solution in the Meadows subdivision was a dead end line because literally there's nothing to tie to out there. It's just out there. And it has a blow off at the very end, which is a fire hydrant. Yeah, and it's routine. It's been routine since we built the yellow zone that the systems were flushed primarily and really before we built the Willows out and, some of these other neighborhoods, they would routinely blow off fire hydrants just to flush the lines because these are big lines with very little volume being pulled through them by the residential units because the system's built for our full build out. And we have 12-inch lines in the village. So that was a lot of water. And the way they keep the water fresh is they blow it off. Fire department uses it for training sometimes. But that's what historically has been happening. They'll go, blow off a fire hydrant. They got to exercise the hydrants anyway, but that's how we keep the fresh water. That's less of an issue today with the amount of build out that we have now in Willows, Cousins Meadow, Cousins Point, the Elk Creek area, the Elk Creek condos. I don't know that they're blowing off like they used to.
Yeah.
But in this instance, probably there will be a blow off here. In this plan, it probably is one in the engineering plan. I haven't studied it. That is how they're taking care of that particular potential issue. You don't want water sitting stagnant and potable water lines. Okay. That's my modern knowledge for you.
Well, it's problematic. I mean, it's tough, but it's the only approach you can take. I mean, eventually this Grand Park Drive goes all the way over to 83, right? So
Goes all the way over to County Road 72.
that's 72.
Yeah, 72.
Yeah.
Yeah, one day. For sure. Any other questions? Anybody?
So a couple there. So Clark Road A, which is the one that goes off the property and is kind of dotted going off into the distance. It's not a cul-de-sac or a turnaround. It's
Are you on the development plan, Andy, or
Yeah.
on the final plan?
the preliminary plan.
Okay, yeah, Road A, I got it.
So that's a 60-foot right of way. Any idea what that's going to serve in the future? Or
Well, so that's going out. We've designed that as a collector road. And that's going out to the future development stuff. And if you notice on here, there's lodging, commercial.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, one day we might do a golf course, we may not. Who knows, we have golf entitlements up there. And that area in almost all of our plans, and the reason it has the lodging and commercial was it was kind of the central location for that golf club type concept. And that road theoretically would be, you can see it's going off,
Right.
and that's going off to where that density, the additional density that we talked about at the beginning would be. So there's a lot of multifamily that was planned in here, which would be more, condominium style type stuff around a golf facility. And we've got lots of sketch plans, dating back years that have different concepts. Obviously, none of them are set in stone until we go and do stuff like this.
You had this one,
But,
if you would like.
So should that, if it's a collector, should that be 80 foot then, or
no, collectors are 60,
60?
yeah, in the town standard.
So Grand Park it's up to an 80, so what's that, the status of an 80 then? Arterial, okay.
Yeah, we just dealt with that, Andy, in the, when we were doing the Willows Apartments in Alpenglow and the road across with Russell, and that all got. Cause that's a collector road going out to Highway 40
Right.
in the studies, and so it's 60 feet. I would like to point out one thing. All the road sections in this are 12 feet. Flow line to flow lines, 24 feet flow line to flow line, so 12 feet per drive lane. And which is what we've historically done. That's every neighborhood at Grand Park is that section, with the exception of most recently 4W.1, the fire department asked us to make them wider. Because the building heights and fire treatments, which we did, we accommodated. We got a similar request here, and I understand the fire district is really wanting to go to wider roads slightly. So we've accommodated that. It's in, I think, the response from Layla that we'll have to change our road sections. The right of way stay exactly the same. But we'll end up being, instead of 24 feet flow line to flow line, which is the drivable surface, includes part of the curb. Will be 26 feet flow line to flow line. Okay, which is, for some of these, it might be a little big, but it'll be okay.
Yeah, and that addresses the comments in there.
That's the fire district comment that we're addressing. Yeah, which is that's not in your code. I don't think your code still, I think, requires, and we've had those comments from them before, and in certain instances, we work with the fire district. And had them like in Elk Creek neighborhood, Willows neighborhood, had them agree, yeah, you're right, these are single family and they're smaller and the 24 feet is appropriate. But in this case, we're fine doing the 26. So.
And I think the issue is that when people have guests, then they park on the street. And then there's barely room for.
No, I mean, aside from, that's about,
That's probably where.
yeah, it's about a 10% cost increase for the road from a width perspective. But I agree completely that, parking on streets is becoming more and more of a challenge and.
Yeah.
It's not a big, 2 feet's not, if it helps them get their big fire trucks around, great. Let's just not go to 28.
And buses.
26 is pretty big. Yeah, the buses work great through our neighborhood. They go through Elk Creek, they go through Willows, the guys have no problems. So it's worked really well. But, if they want to do that, we're happy to try to accommodate.
And then, Michael, our cul-de-sac right now is 500 feet is our maximum length on cul-de-sacs in code or. Or.
I think you're right, Andy, it's something like that. It may be longer, but
And I think, these exceed that, I believe, according to the review comments, but.
I think road F is within the, I think that's why they bulged that road out. Road A to get over road F to length it, shorten that cul-de-sac.
Okay, so we're under 500 now.
I think so. I think we're under whatever the town, because I know we talk about that in planning, and I don't want to say that it's exactly, I don't know what your code is off the top of my head.
And then Clark, on the drainage, I went up on the site the other day and looking at the contours, I thought this was awfully steep, but it's not, it's just the 1 foot contours. It's pretty buildable site. It's really steep down below Grand Park Drive down to Leland Creek. So, but it seems to all drain to a common point pretty much. Is that one little structure shown below Grand Park Drive or?
Well, everything's ultimately going to work its way back down to Leland Creek, but there's, looks like to me there's 3 pond structures, A, B, and C.
Yeah.
on here.
It'll help take care of the settlement.
Yeah, and, you know, ideally, I hope they built these as water quality.
Yeah.
Because that's what we prefer to get the water cleaned and move back to the creek rather
Sure.
than
Yeah.
giant detention facilities.
Okay.
And then that'll obviously flow down through Lila Creek, so. But yeah, generally speaking, it looks like to me that all of our road systems are coming down. You know, back there, the only one on. Pond B has, I think that's one that they had a comment about how's it outletting. I just got to ask our guys what their plan is there.
Yeah.
And how, because Pond B is gonna flow down to Pond A.
Right.
And then that's gonna flow down basically towards the railroad, and there's already an existing drainage.
Right.
That goes down, and there's a culvert under the railroad there.
Yeah, it's kind of an intermediate.
We're gonna be massively over detained on this project because of our wetland mitigation site we built in the meadows.
Right.
It's like mostly unutilized. And then all of our pond systems and more coming in the meadow area. Those are, you know, those have very big detention capabilities that are unutilized today.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but it's kind of easier in a small project like this, rather than say we're feeding it down here and gonna, you know, use up part of this capacity to do these smaller facilities that we blend in the landscape.
And then you noted there's a few small wetlands within the subdivision.
I think they avoided any of the
Yeah.
wetlands that are mapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have the wetlands mapped and.
And then avoids them.
Yeah.
And then you, on the traffic analysis, you mentioned that, so there is a CDOT letter that eventually comes that includes the access to the highway as far as the changes.
Correct.
Right, yeah, that was not in the packet, so.
This isn't on the highway,
Well,
right?
but-
The access to the highway is already established.
Yeah. So Andy's probably correct. There's a letter from CDOT approving the master traffic study.
Right.
Which relates to exactly what you're talking about, and then of course we permitted our highway intersections with CDOT.
Right.
For trips that correspond to that master traffic study. I mean, there's like multiple steps, but yeah, when you interface with the highway, there's still traffics, the CDOT still likes to be involved in.
Yeah.
It's kind of a newer, like, I would say newer in the last 10 years. But that's the way we do it with them, so they'll look at the letter from Felsberg Holt.
Right.
And I can't, the guy, I think it's Brian Killian still.
Yeah.
Brian Olson back,
Somebody-
yeah, this is all good with us, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've got their master traffic study on file, they know what we're doing too.
I have a question for Will, if he is still on that call. Did this get referred out to CDOT?
I believe so, yes.
Then Clark, there were a few comments on the, from the engineer on the intersections being steeper than code, that it looked like from that slope up there that they were gonna, you guys are gonna be able to get those around a little bit, so we don't have steep intersections, or remember that?
I didn't remember anything on that, I remembered something about, gosh, was there something about, it was a 10% grade, but it wasn't for an intersection, it was for something, I mean, you wouldn't want a 10% grade coming to an intersection. It was something else, I'm pretty sure that Martin designed this,
He did talk about.
I think it was, I thought it was access to a fire hydrant, or it was something that was steeper than they wanted, or, oh, no, it was access to the detention facilities.
Yeah.
Was over 10%. For the detention ponds for maintenance,
Right,
and they wanted that reduced down so that you didn't have such a steep access to the detention facilities. But no, I think the intersections are designed to comply with the town standards and typical, you know, we like safe intersections. So they should come down and kind of flatten out before they come into Grand Park Drive.
Yeah.
Grand Park Drives. I think Grand Park Drive is 8%,
right, there's, yeah, where the gate is.
which is higher than, and it's a steeper grade than what's in your code, but it's in the PDD, there's multiple documents to say that's what it's gonna be. It's the only thing it can be. And it's the same thing we had in Rendezvous as our max grade. So it's
Well, that 8% right there where the gate is, isn't it?
pretty much, yeah, it flattens out up here where our intersection ties in, not, I mean, it's less steep, it's still downhill.
Yeah.
And then further up, it really flattens out and kind of crest over. So
Yeah,
I call this area our lower mesa. I mean, I look at this area like, it's pretty flat. I
yeah.
mean, mountain speaking, it's
Yeah.
generally not
Yes.
a crazy steep area.
And then the setbacks for the buildings on the lots is set by the PDD. And I looked on the plat and it shows a 0 side yard setback, is that? Then 10 feet and 10 feet front and back,
On the preliminary plat,
that was on the plat, right?
Hmm.
Guess that might have been set out by the.
well, I mean, I don't have that section of the PDD.
It was on the plat, itself, plat notes.
Right, but what I'm saying is the section of the PDD that references setbacks,
Yeah.
because it's gonna depend if you're doing multifamily, these are all single family.
That
But
seems.
if you're doing multifamily, you're gonna have some zero lot line stuff,
Sure.
but. I would have to, let me look at the plat here and see.
Might be worth taking a look at. Mark, just
Yeah,
as
I
a-
mean, they can just,
Yeah.
yeah, they can double check that, but
Yeah.
maybe Will can make a note too.
Yeah,
And,
Yep, I'll ask them to do that.
yeah, could you, okay, that'd be great. Okay,
And excuse me, with the town, our baseline firm that there's been a recent referral to CDOT, just Will said that he thinks so, maybe that could be something that can be checked out.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll ask Will to
Awesome.
confirm that as well.
Thank you.
Do you want that night?
I just think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah. Did you hear that request, Will?
Yep, I'm going back through emails and double checking that they were on the list.
Thank you.
any other questions?
Andy, just.
Yeah.
Note 13 on the preliminary plat has the setbacks. So you've got a, single family detached setbacks. And it's 10 feet on the front, 6 feet on the sides.
So that's 0.
Minimum distance between structure 10 feet, unless you have fire protection provided. Except lot siding on dedicated open space, which shall be 3 feet on the side, which we typically do, because a lot of times, let's say we have an open space area. And particularly on smaller lots, we've done this a lot where we will slide a house over. And it creates more space and feels better and kind of utilizes the open space in an efficient fashion. Yeah. So they're on the, I think this is 13 is, note 13 is on the preliminary plat.
Okay.
We can double check it against the PDD.
Yeah.
That's all we need to do.
Okay. And it does talk about actually fire protection, you get into those.
If you get less, if you're, I mean, IBC, the IBC code that we operate under and the current, the new IBC is not adopted yet, all require, if you've got buildings closer than 10 feet, there's gotta be.
Yeah.
Fire protected surfaces,
Yeah.
et cetera, to be on the 10 foot. Or up to the 10 foot section.
Okay.
I don't envision these being that way, the way these lots are set up, but you never know.
But on those small lots on the other cul-de-sac, what's the width of those approximately, do you know, or?
You know, I don't, I can't tell you the bigger lots, that's the minimum width that we set for Wheeling Creek, which has worked really well, if you've ever gone up in the Wheeling Creek
Yeah.
neighborhood. And what we have in Wheeling Creek is a lot of lots that drop off down to the creek and they were literally platted down the creek and. The part of the lot that people use for the home is literally probably less than a quarter of an acre.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we set these up, because these mostly back up to there's golf course corridors that we've maintained in all of our plans. Et cetera, that we're gonna keep and keep maintaining. But yeah, they're nice size lots. The widths on, I don't know the widths on the smaller ones off the top of my head, Andy.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the plat, but
And the old house disappears then?
no, it's still up there.
No, I know it's there.
Yeah. Well, all of that stuff, there's a lot of work to do to move and clean out. There's kind of an old yard up there. We use part of it for, there's some cleanup to do.
Where did that driveway come down? Down where the.
That driveway came down just above where the gate is now going into our property. You
Okay.
can't, we cut it out when we put in Kings Crossing extension.
Yeah.
That's all cut way down.
Yeah.
And the road's actually up there to the right.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
And it's. It's kind of growing in at this point, aspens are popping up in it and,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
okay,
So.
thanks. Anything else, folks?
Will, were you able to find out about that referral?
I'm still looking through emails. I apologize.
Yeah, and that's okay. It doesn't have to happen tonight. Yeah, before the final plat.
Yeah.
And I do have a slew of questions, but I'm at the point where I don't know what I don't know because it's so much information. But did you anticipate that this project would be about 30 years in development when you started in 2005?
Well, I started in 1999 and yeah, I got a lot of different pro formas, predicting the future in this environment.
Right.
But, yeah, this project has taken longer than I anticipated. Now, 08 was, I factor in when we do pro formas downturns in economies, but they're usually like a 1 year, 2 year blip. Nothing like what we had in 07. 07 was 10 years stop, nothing happened here. And, what we've had in the last, 3 years has been crazy. And faster than probably what I projected, to some extent, but, overall, yeah, I mean, this is from our perspective, it's a generational project. So this, when we talk about generational projects, our company has lots of them. I'm probably not gonna be the only guy that's developing this property. It'll be, could be my kids or one of Tom's grandkids or, who knows?
Yeah, there are
Very,
a lot of
very
moving
long.
targets in there.
Very long life cycles in a second home resort market, tertiary environment with a community that this is a big community. This is not like this is building a town. We're basically adding on to the towns and bringing them together. And it's a big project. So it'll take probably could be another 30 years.
Yeah, and there's a lot that happens in 30 years and a lot of things that cannot be predicted. There was something that Will Charles said from baseline about something being grandfathered in. Can someone clarify that for me, please? So I'm informed.
Yeah, I can clarify that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so where I mentioned that is in regard to these planned developments in general. 2018 is when those were removed from the code, so no new planned developments can be proposed. This one, as mentioned, had that first step in 2005, where that planned development district plan was approved. So this one can move forward, but if someone in a different part of the city wanted to do a planned development, they would not be permitted to.
Thank you so much. I understand now.
Yep.
So instead of that, what do they propose?
The straight zoning.
Yeah.
All you've got in
they
your
have to-
all you have in your code now is straight zoning. So it's the residential, commercial. Your commercial is your highest density residential. I know this because of my lots.
Okay, so now it just is based on our.
We changed, for instance, Forest Meadow Solar Subdivision was a PD that we changed to straight commercial zoning in 2005, roughly, when I bought it from the Walter Meyer Trust. So,
Thank you.
Anything else? Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna do some more intense research on the 420 pages that I have on my computer. If it's okay, Andy, I'll probably contact you with just some general questions.
Michael, sure.
That's so I don't
So
take up your
I think
time.
300 pages of that was the traffic.
Yeah.
I go ahead and it's after, and he's like, you want me to print these? I was like, absolutely not. The geotech report. And I was like, no, you don't print that stuff out. I would tell you guys, I mean, the PD, I was opposed to the PD being removed from the code when they did their code amendment. And I think it was a huge mistake. And I think PDs are great planning tools, PDs, PUDs, call them what you want. But when you're dealing with a large development with mixed use and the density of this nature, that's going to be over years, you need flexibility in development. And the PD has given us flexibility to adapt projects and products over the time frame that we've been developing it. And we've obviously changed and we'll make a mistake and adapt and adjust and go do something else. So we've developed a lot of different products for a variety of people with the benefit of a lot of different people. That if we had kind of a straight zoning scenario, we probably would not be doing. We'd probably have cookie cutter, same thing everywhere. Not great, in my opinion. So I'm a big advocate of PUDs, PDs, plan development communities. And I think they're great for the communities and towns that they're being developed in. And they're helpful in being flexible with the development needs, because development has to adapt. Things change. And it gives us the tools to be flexible to adapt to those changes. And straight zoning is not that flexible. And you kind of get what you get, which can force guys like me to just go, okay, well, this is what I can do, and I'm just gonna go do it, whether it makes sense or not. That's not a good approach to developing communities of this scale. Just FYI, my big picture, if you guys ever consider amending your code again, I would put PDs back in, or PUDs, same thing. Yeah.
In the public hearing?
Yeah, I guess we'll. open the
I move
public
to
hearing.
open the public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do we have any members of the public? We got a couple in the. Anybody online?
Anybody online would like to speak to the planning commission? You have 3 minutes to speak. Please raise your hand if you would like to. Paula Stewart.
Unmute my audio. Right, there we go. Okay.
Um,
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, this is Paula Stewart. I live at 87 Byers View in Fraser in the Rendezvous development. We've had a lot of change in the last few years that I've lived here permanently in the water. And I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this year, but there has been a lot of drought conditions. And I just wonder whether there's been a reevaluation, if you will, of the water needs for all of this build out that you're proposing, Clark, because I know that I have some grave concerns when people are asked not to fish in the Fraser River and in June last year because the water temperature is going up, and really whether the stormwater and wastewater has been addressed, and it's not just a detention pond, but it's really being put back into the ground. So that's what my question is.
More of an observation than a question, but yeah, it's a tough one for all of us. I mean, the town board you guys just did a review of that. Water planning, right? Yeah.
Water plan.
Right.
Well, I'll be glad to address it. No, we're not gonna review it again. We have water rights that we deeded the town of Fraser. It's called a water augmentation plan, domestic water augmentation plan. Is backed up by the Cousins Ditch, which is second most senior water right in the valley. And the density that's in that augmentation plan correlates to the density that's also in our PD plan at full build out of the PD, everything. Okay, that's how that number was arrived at on the zoning and the EQRs and the consumption. And what I know today is the consumptive use that's in the augmentation plan is not close to even being met because it's assumed to be a year-round annual person living there year-round, consuming off the top of my head 275 gallons per day per home, which, as you know, most of the homes in Rendezvous are second homes and are maybe occupied, if they're lucky, 30% of the year. And so the augmentation plan is way over allocated, in my opinion, for our second home community. That doesn't mean that one day everybody's not living here in their homes full time year round. That'd be cool. And in that case, we've got an augmentation plan that's set up for that and already designed for it. The water that goes through the well system, the water treatment plant, has approximately, I think it's a 4% consumptive use, and 96% of it returns to the Fraser River at the sewer plant. And that's been well studied and pretty well understood. And the consumptive use is evaporative loss, going other places where it didn't go back into the sewer pipes, et cetera, for the homes. But I don't share the same concerns, and I think the environment changes from time to time, and we go through ups and downs. And we're obviously having a really good snow year this year, and not fishing in the river because the water is warm and it stresses the fish is a different issue than whether there's actually water flowing in Vasquez Creek to feed our water system, which is what feeds the water system. So I feel very confident and comfortable about the water rights that the town of Fraser has, and those that we gave to them specifically to serve where you live, Paula, in Rendezvous, in my project, Grand Park, which both were linked at one time. So that's my 2 cents on it, and hope that helps answer your question.
Okay. Any other input from online? Raise your hand if you'd like about 3 minutes to ask questions. All right. So we'll have our entertain a motion to close the public hearing. There.
Close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I believe this came up somewhere back in 2016 as well, about the request for additional studies on the PDD. And we all learned from Rob McGowan that the PDD does have the special rules that we don't get to ask for additional studies. But I know our new lawyer and our new engineers may not know that, but they may need to go read this document. Yeah, we had put that together. If that helps anybody.
What type of document would that be in?
I don't know, you have to ask Rod McGowan, he's the one that brought it up.
Is he still in contact with the town?
I think that we could probably reach him. He retired.
No, okay. Yeah.
He was the town attorney for 20 years, 25 years. But he retired. I don't know, where is that? Somebody.
Would there be, I know that there was an annexation agreement that came along with the plan development district. It was, I'm assuming it was zoned PDD when it was annexed. Because usually those go together,
Yeah.
right? So, so was there another document aside from the actual PDD?
I don't know what Colonel's talking
Okay.
about. Yeah. Right. Was it a document or he just said it in? He's had one of the meetings or open forum meetings, but we were asking about how PDDs work. I think it's. Right. Well, it's one of those, 2016 was right before COVID, years before COVID, but it's when we were talking about getting rid of the PDD and why we were getting rid of it. Part of that was the studies. You couldn't request the studies.
Yeah, our studies, if it's okay, if I address, can I address it? Sure, Chair. The studies don't expire in any of the documents. And, you know, no one in their right mind would ever do what we did, which took years to do those studies. If you knew that every time you came over the new plan, you're gonna go redo the studies, what's the point? Right, you might as well do straight zoning and piecemeal and come in project by project by project and go through the same thing and take years and years to develop stuff. So that defeats the whole purpose of a PD or a PUD. And why would somebody go through and do
But
that?
are they good in perpetuity? I mean, they're not good for 200 years probably, right?
You know
So.
what? I mean, if I'm here 200 years from now, Julie, I'll be sitting there saying, you know what?
Well, your
It's studies are-
grandchildren.
You know, you might be living in a desert there according to Paula, but you know, it'll be what it is.
The other thing is you could bring in 3 attorneys. Put them all through.
And give you 3
Three
different
different opinions, guaranteed.
I think the concern with the traffic study is that the internal traffic, they're modeling correctly. But it's the time, the US 40, and I think that's why CDOT's taking a more active role. Because the US 40 changes in 23 years.
You see, I doing that everywhere. It's not something that's specific to Fraser. It's everywhere. And it's just, it's their directives to, it's part of their planning, which I get and I understand, like, you know, if you're developing a project 3 miles off the highway before, Julie said, well, it's not next to the highway. Well, so CDOT wouldn't know about it. And now what they've asked is can we be a referral agency for anything in the county, period. So that we know what's coming, because ultimately those cars will use the highway system and they're kind of playing the highway system according to that kind of growth.
And we're seeing US 40.
Yeah, we've worked historically, we have a great relationship with CDOT. Done a lot of very beneficial projects with CDOT. The 4 laning that exists from in front of my building down past the fire station, it's my company.
Yeah.
And CDOT participated, that was great. but ultimately, what we've done gives them the information they need, literally the master traffic study gives them the information they need. And then the letter that Felsberg Holt writes as the review is enough for the CDOT guys to evaluate and go, yep, it's all, they've already got our stuff in their models.
Yeah.
Put it that way. And I had a huge meeting with Jacobs Engineering that all of our projects are in their 4-laning study that they did, I think, just before COVID.
Yeah.
So, they have our stuff in there. They just want to make sure that what we're doing is generally in line with what we planned on doing and what they have in their studies.
Isn't it similar to having plans that they had for Winter Park Ranch, which is taken over, I don't know, from 1970s to today to build that out, and it still's got 20% vacant lots. Ptarmigan's still getting built out, Fraser's still getting built out. All those studies were done decades ago, and the base of the studies is single family houses, multi-family houses, commercial, how much traffic will that be? Right, that was already planned out. We don't ask Winter Park Ranch, we don't ask the guys building up the Ptarmigan, hey, we need a traffic study because you changed the density, so that's one of the things that I've seen that we.
Yeah, if we exceeded, let's say we exceeded the traffic study numbers by this development. Well, that's probably gonna involve a more in-depth study by Felsberg and probably more review with you guys in CDOT on, well, how's that gonna work and what's it gonna impact? And is there another signal needed somewhere because of that? That's the things that would trigger. So that's how that works. And it's just good planning what they're doing now. They're trying to plan 20 years from now. And they know that the historical development of this valley has so many units per year historically, and it's probably not going to dramatically change, hence the very long-term development of these projects.
Right, so the letter that Layla alluded to in her referral response may satisfy,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, a motion.
I make a motion to approve of a final plan development plan for Grand Park West Mountain Farm number 1, areas 10W and 11W. I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Preliminary plat. So y'all just did, your motion was final plan development plan. There's a
Yep.
preliminary plat hearing too.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. It's really. 23 and 301.
23, yeah, 2023 was the,
Yeah.
you want to make another motion?
Set a final plan amended. Recommend approval of
Preliminary plat.
preliminary plat. Yeah, sorry. Fraser Planning Commission Resolution number 2023-0301, the resolution approving preliminary plat and recommending approval of a final plan development plan for the residential development known as Grand Park, West Mountain Farm number 1, planning areas 10W and 11W.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate the help.
Sure.
Agenda item. Nothing.
Quarter show.
We're gonna take a quick 5-minute break for all the folks online.
Good.
Break it.
We have a lot of hand wringing.
Okay, so we have a workshop on Clayton Court. Did you prepare that document?
Ed Cannon prepared that document.
I'm sorry?
Ed Cannon.
Is that around? Oh, nice. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Ed. Nice job.
Hello, everybody. How are you all doing?
Good. How are you doing?
All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Hold on a second. Okay, you should see the slide presentation now. It's the same presentation that was in your packet. Again, my name is Ed Cannon, outgoing town manager, soon to be retired. It's nice to be invited back for one last time to do this work session. The last planning commission, I think trustee Quinn asked about, or Commissioner Quinn asked about a work session, and we talked specifically a little about Clayton Court. Clayton Court is actually a good topic for discussion for this work session. I think the timing is right. I think the opportunities are in place. I think the conditions around Clayton Court have been changing over the past couple of years. And now's a good time to have this discussion. So let me go to full screen mode. So, okay. So first of all, this is a work session. It's not a presentation by me. If you have questions, please just pipe up and ask your question. This is kind of an informative briefing and discussion, but we will have a time at the end of this for a deeper dive discussion and some recommendations. So the work session, I want to talk a little bit about Clayton Court. I'm sure everybody knows about Clayton Court, but I want to touch on a little bit of the history, how it's currently zoned, what are the current conditions of Clayton Court. There is a SWOT analysis that's included with this presentation. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then we're going to talk a little bit about development opportunities and recommendations. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So Clayton Court was established as a subdivision back in 1986. It includes Clayton Court, Clayton Avenue. There's some lands to the south. I believe the Holiday Inn sits in the Clayton subdivision as well. And this was with the Clayton family subdivided this property. In 1993, the Tract B, also known as Lot 8, and is also referred to as 150 Xerex, was subdivided, and they included a plat that was approved for 8 mobile homes, and that's on the east side of Clayton Court, on the south end of Clayton Court there. In 1998, the town entered into a subdivision improvement agreement with the Claytons to provide for road and water infrastructure improvements on Clayton Court. 1 year later, that subdivision improvement agreement was amended for Fraser to complete the water and street improvements on the north end of Clayton Court. In exchange for doing that, the Claytons would deed over lot number 1, which is at the very north end of Clayton Court. And this is the lot that's right next to the trail. It's the trail access road. It's also where we stow a lot of snow in the winter times as well. And we can talk a little bit more about that 1999 amendment. 2021, that was the same year that I arrived in Fraser. In that year, the owner at 150 Xerex started demolishing and removing the mobile homes on that property. There is one last remaining mobile home on the south end of that parcel, but it's scheduled to be removed in 2023. And in 2023, the Clayton Court consists of vacant lots. There's some lots with some sheds. There's, I think, up to 3 or 4 mobile homes on the east side of Clayton Court as well. So Clayton Court is zoned medium density single family, which is kind of an anomaly in our downtown, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the purpose of medium density single family is really to provide single family residential neighborhoods that can, accommodate a variety of single family dwelling units and low impact community facilities. And you can also have duplexes in a medium density single family. So under that zoning, it's either a single family home or a duplex. We also have the Riverwalk Mixed Use Overlay District that was created back in 2018. And this overlay district provides a little more opportunities for development that creates a high density walkable mixed use neighborhood. And its purpose there is to integrate the Fraser's historic downtown with the Fraser River, generate opportunities for downtown development, affordable housing, and also for economic revitalization. So this is a snapshot from the town zoning map. And as you can see right there in the center of your screen is that medium density single family in yellow that kind of overlays Clayton Court. And as you can see there, the red around it to the north, to the west, and to the south is all business district. To the east, we have the Fraser River, which is open space, and then we have medium density, multifamily on the other side of the river as well. So the Riverwalk Mixed Use Overlay District, which was created in 2018, again, it came out of our 2017 Downtown Strategic Plan. In fact, this photo comes from the Downtown Strategic Plan. All the area in red in this particular slide is where the Riverwalk District is in place. As you can see, it includes both sides of Clayton Court, the north side of Clayton Court onto the east of Doc Susie and the west of Doc Susie, all the way up to Eastham Avenue. And the purpose of this, again, was to create a walkable mixed-use neighborhood, hopefully to keep that funky, eclectic design in Fraser, create a buffer between the river, the open space, create a river walk along the Fraser River as well. And also to emphasize that the Fraser Avenue is your main east-west connection between the Amtrak station and the Fraser River. The final goal of that was also to enhance the downtown street grid. So currently, the conditions of Clayton Court, and I'll just kind of go over this, the medium density single family is completely surrounded by business district and open space in our downtown. There's 2 town-owned properties that's in the north end of the Clayton Court area. One is the property that I talked about we're using for snow storage. And the other one is where Clayton Court essentially dead ends, and there's a gap between Clayton Court and Fraser Avenue. It's also known as 400 Doc Susie. The town owns that lot as well. We do have 3 mobile homes on the 3 properties that have mobile homes on that on the east side. We also have 4 vacant lots on Clayton Court as well. The green line that runs north-south here is the main sewer line. And as you can see, it runs the entire length of Clayton Court. So sewer is available for development, to support development there. The water is in the blue lines. Water comes off of Highway 40, right there where you see the Trout Lake 330. It runs between those properties to a hydrant on Clayton Court, then it turns south and it dead ends at the intersection of Clayton Court and Clayton Avenue. There's a second water line that also comes off of 40, and it runs down Fraser Avenue and turns north on Doc Susie. The pavement itself only runs about 270 feet north from Clayton Avenue. It ends just about where on the right, that vacant property between the 2 mobile homes there. The pavement ends right about there. So in the 2017 downtown strategic plan, they outlined different weaknesses, opportunities, and so forth. So a lot of what I'm about to talk about came straight from that strategic plan. I did embellish a little bit, looking at current conditions and other opportunities and so forth. So the biggest strength of Clayton Court, first of all, it pointed out that those east properties, those properties on the east side of Clayton Court, when you group them all together, it's about 2¼ acres. And that gently slopes down to the Fraser River, which is a great opportunity as well. We'll get to that in a minute. The west property, that 150 Xerox, faces US 40. So there's high visibility off of Highway 40. In 2017, and I believe it's still in effect today, all the owners were willing to discuss opportunities with the town, with the developers. No one seemed to be putting up any roadblocks for any kind of planned development for Clayton Court. It's also located in downtown Fraser, and it is not just close to transit. The transit runs right by it. So there's a bus stop right on the 40 at the south end of the Clayton Court. Plus, you also have opportunities, to access Doc Susie, Fraser Avenue, the breweries, distilleries, shopping, or downtown district. And finally, the linear alignment of all the properties does provide some opportunity for flexible and selective aggregations. So you could have, kind of an eclectic look of properties. They complement each other, but all of them unique. Some of the weaknesses of Clayton Court, because there are different owners of record, it could hamper some negotiations, some discussions about aggregating properties. Clayton Court also dead ends at the north end of the street. There is no easement between the north end of Clayton Court and Fraser Avenue. And the pavement also ends, and the lack of water on the north end of Clayton Court is a weakness as well. The opportunities, this is where it gets really interesting. To me, opportunities is, you can take a mixed use commercial residential development that would greatly expand Fraser's downtown and retail and dining opportunities in that downtown district. It would create a kind of walkable area between Doc Susie, Fraser Avenue, Clayton Court. Second opportunity is connecting Clayton Court to Fraser Avenue, give you better access, traffic flow, and walkability as well. Extending the water main from Clayton Court to Fraser Avenue, and all from the intersection of Clayton Court and Clayton Avenue to US 40. And then basically you're looping the water lines by doing that. It also will foster development. It improves water quality, improves water pressure for better fire suppression. There's a lot of good advantages to getting those water mains looped. Fourth, there's a 20-foot grade difference between Clayton Court and US 40. That could also provide some very interesting development opportunities with building styles, building heights, probably first floor parking. There's a lot of great opportunities for doing that as well. The biggest opportunity I see is you have high visibility at the southern entryway to downtown Fraser. One of the things that's come up within the past several months with EDAC and among staff is that, downtown businesses would like to see more people driving past Safeway. They'd like to see people driving north of Safeway into the downtown. Once you pass Holiday Inn, and I'm going to be kind of brutally frank with you, our current conditions on the right just past Holiday Inn, we're used to seeing kind of a dilapidated mobile home park and smaller, older buildings and so forth. And there's that natural gateway is missing. So with this high visibility on the southern end, especially on the east side of Clayton Court, that would be a great opportunity to announce to everybody, hey, you're in downtown Fraser now. Also, the commercial development on the east side of Clayton Court could really capitalize on that proximity to the Fraser River and also the Fraser River Trail. We have a lot of people that are walking the trail, biking the trail. Access to the shopping and district through there could be very, very easy by seeing some more commercial development down there on Clayton Court. And this takes me to threats. And I have to be honest with you, I think the biggest threat to development of Clayton Court is our zoning. First of all, the medium density single family zoning. If you look back at that other slide, you see that Clayton Court is basically an island surrounded by business district and open space. It's one residential zone on one street in the middle of our downtown. Secondly, also with the medium density single family, if single family development occurs on Clayton Court, it would just about eliminate any last available downtown commercial space that we have without doing, reconstruction or remodels or so forth. The second threat is the Riverwalk mixed use overlay. And I know that was a good thing when it was passed, but I'd like to talk a little bit about how that affects Clayton Court. First of all, the Riverwalk mixed use overlay allows you to have density bonuses for one of two conditions. The first would be for a 20% deed restricted affordable housing in your development. The second is for the 100% first floor commercial development. The problem and the threat with this overlay district is if a developer utilizes the 20% deed restricted density bonus, it would basically, again, reduce the available land for commercial development there. Another threat is there is no unified plan of development. So therefore, a medium density single family and the Riverwalk mixed use overlay as it's currently written could create a hodgepodge of residential development that doesn't complement the highest and best use of the land for Clayton Court or for the downtown strategic plan. And the reason this is important is we had in the past 4 months, I was approached by 2 different developments for Clayton Court, and I'd like to share those with you real quick. So the first, at the north end of Clayton Court, there was a proposal for a 4-unit townhome, and this is permitted under the Riverwalk mixed use overlay. The 4-unit townhome has failed. They have withdrawn that consideration, mainly because of the lack of infrastructure. There is no water and there is no paved road, there is no sidewalks, and the cost to put those in were prohibitive to the developer. And although we tried to work out or negotiate some way to do some cost sharing, unfortunately, we couldn't make that happen. So they withdrew that consideration. And the second one is a 5-bedroom single family home down there at 150 Xerex. And that is permitted under medium density single family. Now that one is not off the table, but they're kind of holding right now to get a better idea of maybe looking at some different opportunities that may come up. So again, if you look at the threats to Clayton Court, in light of its opportunities, these 2 developments would have essentially removed about 40% of the developable commercial space on Clayton Court. So I talked a little bit about the highest and best use for Clayton Court. And I'd like to talk a little bit about just exactly what that means, because people may not have a good idea. There's an appraisal institute that defines highest and best use as the reasonable, probable, and legal use of vacant land on improved property that is physically possible, appropriately supported, financially feasible, and that results in the highest value. And there's 4 tests that an appraiser will use to make that determination. First of all, is it physically possible? Is the size of the land? The topography, how about access, infrastructure? Is it built in a wetlands? Is it physically possible to develop this land for its highest and best use? Legally permissible. Does the zoning, any kind of restricted covenants, easements, are there existing non-conforming use that may be grandfathered? These are kind of the questions you have to ask. Financially feasible, again, this deals with the cost of the land and the cost of the improvements. And is it maximally productive? Does it create a high rate of return, adjusting for any kind of risk, not just for the developer, but also for the community as well? So if I use those 4 tests for Clayton Court, number 1, it is physically possible. That linear alignment of the properties will allow for some good aggregation, so you could put in a larger footprint on development, greater density. The road and water extensions are certainly possible. There are no physical limitations to doing that. We're not, in a wetlands. We don't have to go through a rock face. So the infrastructure improvements are definitely doable. Is it legally permissible? Well, in my opinion, it can be, but you would need to examine the zoning and determine whether or not changing that zoning will generate the highest and best use. And we'll talk about that in a second too. The same thing with the Riverwalk mixed use overlay. Under the way it's currently written, it is possible, but I'm going to make a recommendation for an amendment to that. Is the project or is the development financially feasible? And I believe that with the right incentives or for infrastructure extensions and so forth, that it can be financially feasible and maximally productive. Well, first of all, for the town, commercial tax, property tax, and sales tax generation will certainly help the town out, generate more revenues to provide better services, to take care of roads and so forth. The density bonus for the first floor commercial also helps to bring in less risk to the developer as well. Just picture the Coastline project that's facing Highway 40. They're going to put 5,000 square feet of commercial space, and they're going to put 10 units above that. So that's taking the type of advantage you can take to build that development and reduce the developer's risk. So with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about what could happen down there at Clayton Court. And this is actually kind of exciting because Clayton Court could become the new main street of Fraser in some ways. First of all, it was identified in the 2017 strategic plan as part of the Fraser Downtown District. And that's that oval that you see in that picture there. The addition of the Riverwalk Mixed Use Overlay District in 18 also expanded commercial development opportunities for Clayton Court. It didn't do a carte blanche expansion, but it did create more opportunities. And also, most recently, those mobile homes that were located at 150 Xerox are being removed. The last one is going to be removed this summer. We have existing lots that are vacant there. So we have basically Clayton Court has great infill development opportunities. So you don't have to worry about tearing buildings down or major infrastructure projects to go along with that. So when you look at Clayton Court and those opportunities, I want to take just a quick second to talk about maybe opportunities that exist beyond Clayton Court. And this is that red triangle area there. This is already zoned business. It's in the Riverwalk Mixed Use Overlay District. But those properties there, they could potentially be incorporated into a unified plan of development that in some ways could just simply almost double the size of downtown Fraser on the east side of the interstate there. Those current properties there, I don't know if you can see my mouse on your screen.
Yeah. You can see it.
But here At the north end of that parcel is a laundromat. We have this large area here, which is an excavating company. And meaning no offense to the excavating company, that's not the type of business you want in your downtown business district. We also have a dental clinic here. And according to the county records, these two properties here are currently used as residential. But if you imagine coming down Highway 40, you know, you've passed Holiday Inn, you get up here to Clayton Avenue, you could have this whole area part of our downtown commercial district. And with new development, mixed use development, commercial, residential, this becomes a major gateway and invites people into downtown Fraser. So talk about recommendations. First of all, I want to point out that the town is currently working with MAD for the Victoria Village. This was a significant investment by the town and an opportunity by the town to address affordable housing in Fraser. They're going to generate a minimum of 105 affordable units there, according to the grant. So I think that we could maybe shift the focus for Clayton Court, maybe away from affordable housing to more preserving our commercial opportunities through mixed-use commercial residential development. Expand our downtown, create that funky feel, you know, fulfill the downtown strategic plan, and allow the development to mainly focus on commercial and residential. I would also recommend that you rezone Clayton Court from medium density single family to business district. It doesn't make a lot of sense to put a residential district in the heart of your downtown. Right now, the opportunity is prime with most of those lots being vacant. The other properties, I think, again, if they're willing to talk, it'd be a good time to do that. I would also look at modifying that Riverwalk mixed-use overlay district. Right now, like I said, it gives you bonuses for two different circumstances. What I would propose is that you consider changing that district so that it only provides density bonuses for 100% first floor commercials, especially for properties along Clayton Court. Other opportunities and recommendations is find a way to create opportunities to foster mixed use development. And I listed a couple of them. I've talked about them before. The Downtown Development Authority. There's also special improvement districts or business improvement districts. Each of them have their advantages and disadvantages, and that could be a good time for another discussion down the road. I would also recommend creating a Clayton Court master plan. This master plan can also be included in a DDA plan of development, an overall plan of development, which would be required if the DDA was one of the incentives that you wanted to create. Right away, I think the town should be working with Merrick engineers to create a roadway easement on that town-owned property at 400 Dock Susie to connect Clayton Court to Fraser Avenue. Putting an easement in place would be relatively simple. We own the property. It's just a matter of writing the easement, get it recorded. I would also recommend preparing engineering and construction plans for the road and water improvements in the north end of Clayton Court. Now, creating the easement and preparing the engineering and construction plans in itself adds as an incentive. It's cost that a developer would not have to pay for. And it would also give you, basically shovel-ready plans for any kind of development there. And I would also consider incorporating those neighboring properties along US 40, that little triangle of land, into any kind of plan of development for that, so you could have that gateway into downtown Fraser. So that's really the end of my discussion. There was no questions, but now's a good time to start asking them.
Yeah, not so many questions, just some clarification. So
Sure.
When we did the Riverwalk overlay, I believe it went from the Holiday Inn to Park Avenue. All of that was supposed to be included in the Riverwalk overlay so that you could have density bonuses for those properties if you put commercial on the bottom or if you did employee housing. The idea was to give you a real walking town around that whole area.
Right.
The other thing is on the lot 400, address 400. If memory serves me right, that house was traded to the town, that the town would put in the water line and pave the road for that development. So that should already have been done by the town somewhere between 1986 and today, or whenever that trade on that house happened. The reason we traded for that house is so we could connect those two roads. The whole point of us getting that house.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I brought up the zoning map again. All the area you see in red that has these cross hatch marks. The cross hatch marks denote the Riverwalk mixed use overlay. So it does actually go up to County Road 8, includes Victoria Village, Park Avenue. It crosses the highway. It does come down. It covers the Clayton Court area. And there's even a section down here where the Holiday Inn is. And I think there's a proposed development right behind Holiday Inn as well.
Yeah, there's no flex on that.
Right. So and then your second point, going back to the history, when we were discussing with the 4-unit townhome, it wasn't until after that discussion that I discovered the document, a copy of that amended SIA. And I had a discussion with Kent Whitmer about the implications or the ramifications of that. And there was a timeline on that, that it had to be completed, I think, by 2004 or 2006, sometime in that time frame. When that time frame passed, there's a 3-year window that's called the statute of limitations. That's passed as well. So the obligations from a legal standpoint don't exist anymore for the town to build the road and also
I would argue that I don't think the town has the right to default on an agreement they made with somebody because the town didn't do what it was supposed to do.
I'm just relaying what Ken Whitmer told me.
I understand, but
Who has the property? Who's concerned about it? What property owner?
everybody on Clayton Court because it determines the value of the property. If they have to put in $700,000 or $800,000 to pave the road, increase the sewer line and move the water line, that's a huge cost to those properties. And this is the deal that Fraser made, similar to the 2005 PDD that was made with Grant Park. And there's other deals that Fraser made in the past that they keep reneging on. So the problem with the government right now is how do we keep making deals with people and the government doesn't provide the deal they said? And that's the town. That's us saying, we're gonna do this for you. If you give us the house, we'll do this for you. They gave us the house, we didn't do it for it.
And that was, who gave us the house?
I guess it's one of the Clayton zones.
Is it a written agreement on?
Yes, the SIA is a written agreement.
Okay.
It is.
And the town should have done it back in 1998, 99. All the way to 2004, they had the opportunity to do it and they didn't do it. Things were a lot cheaper back then too.
So now, but I wonder if that included the water line and the paving that they did for the existing.
It was supposed to go all the way down the road. From my understanding, I haven't read the document in decades.
Yeah.
Well, it's just one more, excuse me, one more reason there. The incentive is to get that street and gutter down there so that this can happen, so.
Right, I agree with Ed on that.
Yeah.
Sure, everything in the Riverwalk should be as much commercial on the lower floor as possible. Because that's what's gonna help our town grow to be a fun, happy town.
But Ed, and all this, you know, and I agree, I mean, the part of the incentive is the town comes in with help for the infrastructure down there, facilitate it. But at what point do we force the issue? In other words, you can't come down here and build a 4-unit townhome on your property.
Change the zoning.
But zoning is a highest and best use. You can't, I'm in the business zone, I can still build a house on my property.
Right.
So you can build anything below that. So
I had that question too,
yeah,
and that's why I pulled out my handy dandy
Yeah.
printed code.
Yeah.
If you want to build a single family home in the business district, you need a conditional use permit.
so you do need approval then.
You do.
Okay.
Julie is absolutely correct. And to follow up on Parnell's comments, you know, it's going to be up to the Board of Trustees of whether or not they want to go back and budget for and do those improvements. But those improvements, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure who was around back in 1999.
I was.
I was.
But anyway, like I said, from a legal standpoint, there is no obligation. Now, from a moral standpoint or from a sense of duty or obligation, that's up to the Board of Trustees when they do their budget and their capital planning. Now, I would agree that you know, putting that infrastructure in place would also create a great incentive. But if you do that before you address the zoning question, we would have had a 4-bedroom, 4-unit townhome probably come into the planning commission tonight instead of my presentation.
Yeah, let's at least get the zoning straightened out.
Well, and I think most people that own in there, if they could change the zoning, they would, and most people would want to do some kind of commercial, because that Riverwalk is where people are gonna want to hang out. And we talked about moving the art center over to the other town-owned property, which might make the better lot.
So what's the rezoning process? What do we have?
I can talk about that, Katie. First of all, the Board of Trustees, and this is right out of section 19-2-170 rezoning from Fraser Municipal Code. The Board of Trustees may amend the boundaries of any zone district as shown in the zoning map according to the procedures in section 19-1-2-10. It includes a pre-application, a completeness review, PC recommendation, and a Board of Trustee public hearing. Individual property owners could initiate that, citizen petition, or the town could initiate the zoning. So it would require a public hearing, would require notification, I think 55 days notification and mailings and so forth. But it's easy to do. It's probably the same procedure you use for the Riverwalk mixed use overlay.
Sounds like we've got willing landowners down there, so. That's the big question. So
They'd have to come.
So the property owner that owns 150 Xerox where the 8 mobile homes is located. One of my questions to Kent was, well, can he go back and put in mobile homes again? But the mobile homes are now a conditional use in this district. So he would have to come back to the town to get permission to put mobile homes back there. But that owner also owns 2 lots on the east side. One of them is vacant, one of them is being rented out to a mobile home user. There's another property owner owns 2 parcels as well. And then there's 2 more property owners north of that. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 property owners, including the town, that would be affected by any kind of zoning. I've worked in communities before that rezoned part of their downtown district that allowed residential. And when they rezoned it, any change of use could only be going back to business. It couldn't be residential again. So you kind of grandfather people in. But the biggest thing is to have that discussion, you know, either tonight or at another planning commission meeting, to discuss the merits of the possibility of changing that zoning.
any reason why not?
Yeah, I think you made a pretty good case tonight for getting on with business and changing the zoning first.
Yeah.
Then figuring out how we incentivize development. Because if I were one of those landowners that had a vacant lot or whatever, I'd love for you to rezone it business, because then I could turn around and sell it for more money.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'd have a lot of opposition to rezoning that business. And they can either then develop it themselves or sell it to a developer who could come in and aggregate some of those properties, which is a great idea. I think everything about this presentation that you've made tonight, Ed, makes perfect sense to me if we really want to be the town that we say we want to be. And have a vibrant downtown district with restaurants and commercial space.
It's a shame we can't get both sides of the road, but only doing commercial and existing neighborhood and housing. But the one side of the river is what we have, so it work really well.
Right.
And it's one of our best features, that section of rivers.
Yeah,
I don't know if
it's
that's-
beautiful.
Megan and I walk down the trail all the time.
Oh, sure.
It's great. It's-
No, that's the one thing that we lack in this county, anywhere outside of Grand Lake, kind of.
Right,
Not, Grand Lake doesn't, they don't front their business on the river or even on the lake.
yeah.
A little bit on the lake, but anyway, there's no place where you can go in the summertime, sit on a patio and enjoy anything other than traffic noise, because all of our patios face on US 40.
You mentioned Sand Lake, the Rapids restaurant, is one of the most popular
Yeah,
restaurants in
that's on the
summertime.
river.
because of the river.
It's on the river.
Well, I grew up in Texas and
San
I
Antonio.
saw San Antonio do this years and years ago.
Yeah.
They came in with the kind of redevelopment plan for San Antonio for downtown. And they created this, what they call the River Walk,
Yeah.
and it just took off and it just totally changed
Yeah,
the complexion of the town and the way people viewed San Antonio.
yeah, I had no idea where I walked to a building and came out the other side and there was a river. and I'm like, what the hell?
My parents love it.
So, you know, I think, and, you know, like you said, Winter Park doesn't have the Fraser River, we've got it. And shame on us if we don't utilize that feature.
Your park has it, they haven't taken advantage of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, we get.
Well, they've got Vasquez Creek.
There was some, we just got some updates for our floodplain, right? Does that affect this at all, or?
So floodplains can still be built in. It just requires different requirements for how you, I'm sure you're familiar with that, but it did change. I can see if I can pull up those latest maps. Focus has been on Victoria Village, obviously, but we can look at that as well.
Yeah, yeah,
But regardless, development is going to happen on Clayton Court.
yeah.
Regardless of the new floodplains or how that changes over the years. So really, and there's always some potential for strengthening the embankment around the Fraser River to help mitigate the floodplain and bring it back into the river and ultimately drive stronger flows to the Fraser River, which is a benefit to everybody.
Yeah.
So there's definitely ways you can work
Yeah,
with that, even if some of the floodplain areas have shifted or changed there.
yeah, but I know you said that you have some communications with the property owner there behind Holiday Inn about a possible connection over to Safeway.
Well, he had talked about doing that, the one next to Safeway there. He wanted to see if he could do a higher density project, but the parking kind of fights that a little bit, so he's looking at doing 8 minutes. The town had, when Catherine was here, asked if he could do a connecting road there or something. You know, he hasn't started any construction yet, he still might be open to options that he could do.
That's an important part of this. I think that we're trying to make a way to get into this district without going up on the highway. That
Right,
kind of thing.
exactly, and it comes right off the entrance, Safeway, and it's that.
Yeah.
It, if you guys know the piece, come out of Safeway, you can turn and go to Mercy House and go straight, and if you went straight, you go right on the spot. Right behind that.
So one of the conditions of that approval for that plan was actually in the resolution was actually a requirement for I believe it's a 30-foot wide right of way for that road connection.
Yeah, they took that out at some point, I don't remember why, Ed had mentioned it when we got that plan back on action, because there was some miscommunication between the town and.
We can check with it, but
No,
it's,
right.
yeah, it's
That was because of the connection of they needed access to the utilities there.
Yeah, they have to hook into the back side of the Holiday Inn or through.
They didn't have access, they're coming through our property, they couldn't do it. That was the spot.
The parking lot, yeah.
That's a really important.
There's a little wetland on that, but
Yeah.
you know, as we learn, wetlands can be moved or improved to make it better somewhere else.
Yeah,
It's not,
But you're right, you can mitigate.
Yeah, that's what it is, and mitigate the wetland and improve somewhat.
Another good follow-up on that triangle property that he has up on the screen now is that, remember, we had some indications from the owner of J and L. I guess Lawyer Rumford passed away, I didn't realize that.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's not.
but anyway.
So,
lease
so
here, where that-
the own,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, the owner of that J and L company, I don't know if he's still alive. He contacted the town last year. His name is
That's what we're just saying, Ed. They just,
oh, but Larry's not the owner, he leased that building.
No, the owner's name is Lafayette Ayers.
Right.
And he contacted the town last year, indicating that he'd like to know what the town's intentions were, because he'd like to work with the town.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that is, if you can see my cursor again, that is the big parcel here.
It's a big. Yeah, it's a big. Yeah, so anyway, it'd be good to get back with him and see.
And he's elderly, better do it then.
Well, he looks good on a motorcycle in his Facebook profile.
Oh, yeah.
Larry, or
Yeah, right.
good man.
So tonight. Spoon think ahead, it sounds like that it. Well, for one, I want to make a motion that the planning commission recommends to the board of trustees to rezone,
Pursue rezone.
pursue rezone. We recommend that they do rezone Clayton's Court to business from medium density single family
The business. Yeah.
business use and not business, this business. Yeah.
Clear enough,
I got it.
okay,
I second that.
any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Second,
yes.
That's
first step.
So how did that work in the process? Do they give us direction to go forward with that and then we prepare
Well,
all of the?
we'll talk strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was what Ed said was one of the
Oh,
steps
okay.
is the
Mhm.
recommendation from
Mhm.
planning commission.
Just
Yeah.
want to know where I fit in.
Yes.
If I do, I mean, I think I should, but.
Yeah, Juliet may not require baseline participation, because, our code is pretty clear about notices, public hearing, advance notice. But that's going to be up to Michael and the Board of Trustees if they decide to go forward with this.
Great.
A quick question for you, Ed and Mrs. Joy. Say that 5-bedroom family home did get through to the planning commission. Is there anything legally that we could do to not recommend they buy that property?
Absolutely not. If, our code list, there's a table in our code, chapter 19. Julie's probably got a copy of it in her right in front of her there. But it's about what is the land uses, what's permitted, what is conditional under different zonings. The medium density single family homes are permitted use. There's nothing the town can do to stop someone from building a single family home. They have to go through the process. Now they have to subdivide the land, possibly, but it's permitted use. You couldn't stop it. The 4-unit townhome at the north end as well. It's a permitted use under the Riverwalk mixed use overlay. And that's why I also recommended that you consider maybe changing that density bonus for the deed restriction along Clayton Court. And that way someone doesn't say, well, okay, I'd love to do that. I'm going to get my density bonus. I'm going to put in a 3-story 120 unit residential, and I'll give you 24 deed restricted units. Now, a couple of years ago, that was very important. It was extremely important. But with 105 deed restricted units going in at Victoria Village, it may not be so important now. But again, that's a call for the board about what their priorities are.
So, and my question is now too, so if these folks with the proposed 5 bedrooms, because they purchased the property at the time that it was zoned single family. If we change the zoning, would they still be allowed?
No,
Okay, all right, interesting.
It's it's the same people that own the triangle as the east side, that's Fraser downtown. L. I don't know who that, they don't know who that is. They don't know who that's.
very nice gentleman. I've spoken to him several times.
You have?
I have.
And his name is Merrick?
Yes. Like I said, he called asking, and he just threw this out. He said, I'm exploring an idea. I want to bring some more value to the land. And he said, I'm thinking about putting a single family house there. And I listened to him. I said, well, that's permitted. You can do that. I said, but let me give you an alternative. And I told him about the Riverwalk mixed use overlay and how maybe a larger scale development could substantially improve the value of the land. I think that was just enough for him to say, well, let me think about that for a while. So we've got a narrow window. We've got property owners that seem to be agreeable. We've got a lot of vacant land. We've got disproportionate zoning in the downtown by having this island of residential completely surrounded by business. The time is right to go ahead and start making some changes, I think.
So is there a reason to keep the overlay district then, or?
You could either change the overlay district, but the thing is, the overlay district gives you the density bonus for commercial. And that helps reduce the risk. So if you do anything with the overlay district, maybe you really evaluate the overlay district, and that could be another work session for the planning commission to evaluate what is practical for that density bonus for affordable housing versus commercial.
And something that we're also kind of exploring right now is doing some research as far as what type of economic development incentives could make sense and could even be tied to zoning overlays. So we discussed those two existing density bonuses, one with the ground floor commercial and one with 20% of that being deed restricted for the residential side. We could look at some different economic packages that could help, encourage that commercial mixed use product. Where it's not just tied to that density. Maybe there's some better things that we can, look at, some alternatives that we could bring to the board, bring to the planning commission for recommendations. And this is the interest of downtown area. Changing that zoning is that first step. And it really gives us that leverage to look at any kind of tax increment financing options for a district when it's zoned business. You have a master plan set for that downtown development area. And when people come for that special use permit, they go for that request. The planning commission can say this is not in alignment with our adopted master plan for Clayton Court.
Right.
Thus, please look at these other uses that are in alignment. Here's the study, we can advertise that type of study. We can supplement it with that tax increment financing option. And then ultimately we can look at, ways to invest in downtown, especially when we have that kind of ethical obligation for that development of Clayton Court.
But I'll bring up another thing later, question. But I've been taking some commercial classes, and one of the big things is to get more commercial businesses to show up to your commercial district. If they have something unique that the commercial businesses can start in. And that's why this Riverwalk area gives us something unique to everybody else. So we invite better restaurants, better shops, right? And they know, oh, I'm close to the river district, but I'm on the highway. So hey, at least I'm close enough so people are coming here, they're gonna come to my shop. So you'll see our commercial fill up better.
Hey, Ed, did you talk to the Clayton family still owns 3 of those lots?
No, I did not.
So
we still have the lots there.
Sherry has one, or yeah, and
Bobby's holding up.
Huh?
Bobby's holding up for $5. And if it gets rezoned, you may well get it.
one of the advantages too that I'm sorry, Bob, did you want?
Oh, this is totally off this subject, so you go ahead and I'll, my
Okay.
question is. then.
You know, part of the benefit of us going through the master planning process right now with Victoria Village, we may be able to have some type of negotiating leverage for existing property owners if they're looking for a place to live in town. Maybe they're looking for a newer resident, just saying. And could be a bargaining tool for the town to kind of get to the end goal here. And, you know, I think it can benefit the property owners, it can benefit new property owners that come to build some of this business district. And obviously a benefit to the town for a vibrant downtown and increased sales tax base that we desperately need.
So to that point, you know, this development that's in progress right now, Cosling. I believe it's-
Cos-
This is one
They're-
of
they're
the
sitting
developers here.
Yeah.
They might have some
Cosling
comments
is
Cosling.
doing exactly, he's right there.
Constantly.
Exactly what we want done with the rezoning and the central business district and encouraging density bonus with commercial space. I mean, we get, and when that becomes occupied, it becomes an example for developers who come in and they see this and they say, oh, yeah, we could buy these 3 lots and we could do something similar. I think we've got a lot of momentum started in the right direction and we shouldn't drag our feet. And now can I ask my question?
Please.
This has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that I don't know. I've been trying to figure out what Frodo means.
Just
And
Fraser
it's
down.
something like the Lord of the Rings or something. A Frodo in Lord of the Rings.
One logo in Denver. So it's a play on-
Over downtown.
And what is Frodo?
Lodo.
Fraser, lower downtown.
That's what I meant.
Fraser down. Okay, Fraser down. All right, now, because I kept looking at this going Frodo. What? I should know what this is.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, thank you.
I do have a question for. Do you have any interest in that commercial land?
Yeah, come give us some feedback. Introduce yourself.
So my name is Greg Beckler. I was the applicant that, well, we never applied for it, but we talked about doing the full townhomes on the one block on Clayton Court. And that was really just conceptualized because it is a dirt road and doesn't look that great, and I'm definitely not gonna build commercial in that area as it exists right now, but, you know, people would buy a home to be there. So that was kind of where that idea developed. We're supportive of the rezoning to business. We would build retail there. We would love to assemble more of the parcels there. We still have one under control on the north side. And so we're open to. When we kind of proposed some options that I guess the town just can't enter into because of. How the town is, your statutory municipality. So there's just certain arrangements that can't be entered into on your guys' behalf, but we have the intent to develop at least that one parcel, hopefully more. And we're willing to put in the infrastructure while we develop that. You know, any sort of incentive package. I think the economic development policy that you guys had in place before, just that alone gets us a long way to building there and, you know, devoting dollars to the infrastructure too. But yeah, I think it could be one of the coolest areas in the valley, let alone Fraser. All said and done. A couple, I don't wanna.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how much time I have, or.
We asked you to speak.
The couple things, because I was talking with Michael about this earlier today. On the 100% commercial on the ground floor is tricky. Because for the larger developments, you're required to do the ADA units too. So then you start forcing people to do elevators. And so the size of what's being built back there, if it is being built parcel by parcel, or even 2 at a time, it's not really big enough developments to warrant elevator from a feasibility point of view. So I don't know if you, like, I think having retail on Clayton makes a lot of sense and out towards the river. But if there's a way to sneak in a ground floor unit somewhere just to satisfy the ADA requirement, that makes a huge difference. Like on Coastal Lake, we were looking at doing an elevator service 2 units and it was like crazy. So that's when we split into 2 buildings. And
So that was I was gonna bring that up is that one of the recommendations that Ed made was to do away with the, the one, just have the commercial downstairs ground floor space as a bonus, but you guys actually use both.
Yeah, so we, on the Coastal Lake project, we use both.
You use both. You, on the building that fronts 40.
Yep.
You use total 100% ground floor.
Exactly, yeah.
And you got your bonus.
Yep.
And then on the other one, you used an ADU unit or used
We did the 20% deed restriction.
20% deed restriction. So you use the deed restriction. So I guess, Ed, my thought was maybe we shouldn't jump the gun and look at doing away with the 20%, deed restriction unit as a possible bonus situation, because we just had it used by a group with Powson.
Yeah, I think too, like the we used the density bonuses on the Coastal Lake project too, because it was such an oddly shaped site that it didn't really lay out well for, like, Clayton Court lays out much better. Everything we've been conceptualizing, we wouldn't even try to get the density bonuses. It would be more for sale product above those, above those retail spaces. We're not in the business of building condos really, so I guess a condo developer might feel differently, but for like, a mixed use with townhomes above retail, that's kind of what we were conceptualizing if it was ground floor retail. But yeah, I think it's a good tool to have, and like, you make it conditional when,
And you have your commercial renting.
part of it, yeah, we're still negotiating the southern space.
Because I mean, that's kind of the complaint I've heard is that from Winter Park is, what's that guy, the aero developer is, has that commercial and
Oh, yeah, no, I'm gonna,
no one's in it.
It's almost nice.
yeah,
Yeah, he's got those
Yes. It's nice.
lower units than $1,400,000, $1,500,000, quick commercial and
Price per square foot.
and it's you finish. It's a
yeah,
shed.
yeah.
Is it called?
You just hear that. I mean,
No, right.
so I was asking that. I mean, I think we're much better town than.
Yeah.
This is a unique product that you're talking about.
Yeah, this is the unique rivers.
This is not another commercial space on US 40. This is. I know. Yeah, so.
The yellow.
I was asking because he is on 40 and that shows that
That's
there's
50.
a need for commercial and Fraser.
Yeah, I think the,
And the ADU is that's really good feedback.
yeah, I think that like getting first movers is the toughest part. Like, the retail, we typically don't do retail, but the retail to do retail at the Coastal Lake project made sense because the distillery is right there, Fisher's across the street, the winery, there's so much going on there that that's where people are, Amtrak stations right across the street, bus stations right there. So like to be I think providing incentives that get people over those first 3 to 5 years to justify developing kind of not on an island, but far enough away where if you don't know what's back there, you don't go there. Is important, huh?
Maybe like an oasis.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it will be an oasis, but
So
like
in particular for retail?
retail especially, yeah. Just getting those first few years are the toughest to.
Good job for it. You're not incentive.
Well, the yellow buildings that everybody loves so much, Farmtown, one of the reasons that we're still sitting there is we lost all the time. When COVID came, you can't get anybody back to say they want to rent the space. We can find them tenants, you probably finish the build. It's
But that's another story.
Another song, I'm just showing it as, we offered the incentives and we got the buildings built.
Right.
Well, sort of.
I got everything there at the time.
Everything went great.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how's that front of that coming as far as the sidewalk then?
The sidewalk on Coastal Lake?
Yeah.
On 40, I'd have to check our schedule exactly when that's gonna be completed. I can give it to you though. It should be before we put the skin on that building, so it'd be, I would say May.
Okay, in the summer though.
Yeah, but I'll, if I can get I can text you the dates on it.
Sure.
But yeah, that's a priority so they can get the skin on the front. So that because of the weather
Yeah.
and how much CME scope, we just had to kind of
This is a tough winter for you.
Yeah, not ideal,
Yeah.
but it's not, we're not giving up on building up here because of it, so.
No. Appreciate what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, thank you
That's
for your
great.
input.
And we have Paula online.
We'll get a hand up.
Yeah, Paula.
Go. Hello again.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Paula Stewart, I'm speaking on this subject as chairman of EDAC. I met with Michael last week and he attended our last meeting, and as did Ed, and we've talked quite a bit about funding sources for downtown, what we can do as a commission to recommend to the board. And so I'm just really signed on tonight to speak on behalf of VDAC to say that we would support the rezoning of that district in Clayton Court to business. I think that it would be, to me, from a planning perspective, the highest and best use, and anything that we can do as a group to help facilitate that, we will. So that's all I want to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Paula.
Great, thank you.
And it seems like the task now is to kind of fine tune the overlay, possibly do the next thing, and the zoning is the first priority.
So once the zoning is, if that is the direction, if it is go forward for approval and it ultimately gets approved and changed to business, the next step is really looking at if you want to have that downtown master plan, especially as far as layout of the roads and sidewalks and parking goes. If you were, for example, just looking at Clayton Court and you were very much simply just looking at widening that road with a sidewalk on each side, maybe some diagonal parking along it, that's the main road that cuts through, and you have your kind of main street feel with a development on both sides. Once we kind of understand that plan of development, that's where we can work towards those construction and engineering plans. And we can start budgeting for those and then look for different ways that we could finance it, through, we talked about the tax credit financing. We can talk about, looking at how we can budget these funds over the next several years. Victoria Village is going to be a very expensive project. So it's something to be careful of. So stretching ourselves too thin, but reallocating something such as property taxes before we really get a lot of development going could be of significant advantage. For example, you do have Coslig, they're downtown. They're looking at, being opening their doors in November, it sounds like. If this is a direction that planning commission can recommend, EDAC recommends, the board looks at moving forward with something like that, getting that in place before that opens does provide us with a boost as far as looking at that property tax increment, and we'll build momentum towards other development along with other economic incentive packages that make sense.
Great.
So Ed, excellent presentation. Thank you for doing the work on that. Very well put together and very, very thorough. So
It's my pleasure. Here's my last guy. I'll go.
You're cutting out that, Ed.
we got what you said. So it's been a good discussion about this topic at the staff level, and it's great to really kind of bring it forward to this light.
And the other thing it seems like we need to maybe start focusing on too is pretty much easements for the road on the north and the south end.
Mhm.
Both ends.
I agree.
Yeah, your connection idea is great to talk about.
Yeah. Seems like that's.
I think that was the intention too behind demoing that building as well, along with it being dilapidated.
Yeah.
Dilapidated.
And then both ends, north and south end.
Okay.
Just say what.
Yeah. No, any other things to discuss tonight?
Well, just the future agenda item, in this class that I'm taking, it's like 250 hours of commercial stuff. And the 15-minute city is in the class, so it's a fairly new class they put together anyway. If you don't know what the 15-minute city is, it's a mile by mile city. You can walk from one end to the other, everything leads in one city. The reason I bring it up is when they talked about it, the thing I liked was their idea is to have no cars in that 15-minute city, right? And a question of what's the most expensive part of building affordable housing? It's your parking lots.
Yeah.
Because every unit takes 2 parking places, 1.5. So if you have a 400 square foot unit, and you have a 210 by 20 foot parking space, you have a 200 square foot parking space, which is half of the unit.
Yeah.
So when they, as we think about this moving forward, if you really want workforce housing, you gotta think about how much parking you give up. What height limit are you willing to give? What open space are you willing to give up? And what density are you willing to add to it? Because the more vertical you go, up to 4 stories, maybe 5 requires an elevator. The more stories you go up, the less open space you have, the less parking you have, the cheaper they can keep those buildings for resale or for rent. So those are the things that they said, look at as you move forward, finding out what you want in your town and how close you want the people in your town to be. And the more people that are walking around, the less parking.
And maybe these affordable units include a parking space you have to rent, so you can make it really affordable by not having a car.
Well, that's one of the, they have these I units, and what they actually do is they provide. Based on how many units it has, for every 20 units, you get 2 cars that are cars that you can reserve. So if you have to go like to Denver, you can reserve the car for the day to go to Denver and cost you $100 for the day or whatever.
Yeah.
So they have pre-done cars you can reserve. You need to go to Granby for something, you rent the car and go for the hour and come back. Vacant space on the time that you drive it. So it's a really cool idea.
I think that we should be cautious of our parking.
Because
Because we are already seeing, I mean, the biggest developer in our area was talking about people parking on the streets.
Yeah,
So we need to really think about the parking before we go any lower, because we already lowered our parking. So
Well,
we need to be cautious of.
yeah, they talk about parking garage.
And we're not a city, that where people are driving there with a car.
Yeah,
And there's not Uber here, they just need to be cautious.
But to
And
increase
this will
those-
be, I won't be around.
You'll be around in my town.
Yeah.
Around.
I'm going definitely.
And one of their suggestions is to parking garage. One of the way you make parking garages affordable, like we looked at Victoria Village, you put a lot of housing around it so that the garage is central. And you allow something to go on top of the garage that pays for the garage.
So we had density bonuses down in this area to be able to put a parking garage
Somewhere.
and maybe around Larry Bump. Where it's accessible. You know, I know we talked about the Victorian Village, but now that property's.
And you should hear people when I on a vacation, I don't have it, and people say, what do you mean you only have 1 parking space? We're bringing 3 cars, and I'm like, well, there's a free parking garage that's literally a block away. And they just lose their, people do not want to walk even a block. It's just shocking.
That's why I'm thinking that to be able to have one more central, but that's for our future plan.
But
And
it
then as far as
does,
the density bonus, whoever gets it, they also have to kick in, and then they're going to rely on our parking structure. It's another parking.
Breckenridge built their parking garages for the sea tax and the associates, so that's here. And then you park in the parking garage, take a bus.
What's another $2 a ticket when it's $250?
50
Oh,
cents.
yeah.
50 cents.
Yeah, okay. No.
We got 1 minute.
So.
We'll do sure.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
thanks, Ed.
Sarah.
I actually get to see.